Good morning, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast, episode 67, the number one podcast in the world for growing your insurance business. I'm your host, Christian Brindle. I'm joined with my co-host, Glenn Shelton, and we are back, and we're doing it again. We're running it back. A couple weeks back, we did Times We Went Bust, and it was such a enthused episode that we did not get to everything that we wanted to discuss. So we're running it back, part two. Times We Went Bust. Good morning, sir. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning. Doing well. That intro gets me hyped every time still. I'm waiting for it to not get me hyped, but it still does it, you guys. It still does it. I'm excited for this one. We had a lot to talk about last time. I was thinking this morning during my workout, I was thinking about some good bus stories. There's still quite a few to pick from. This might ultimately end up being a part 3. We'll have to see where we end up here, you guys. But I'm excited to get into the main topic later today. I have something a little funny though that I was thinking about. So I was listening to this podcast this morning, and they were talking about guests. Obviously, we have guests on the pod all the time. We had the great Nick Frumpkin yesterday. Still appreciate his conversation, but we don't have very many listeners or watchers, as we know. Mostly our parents and family that just listen and watch the show. How would you feel?
According to your son.
Yes, according to my son. No one watches the show. What if we did a mom's episode? What if we brought our moms on the pod and we had I knew this would be the reaction.
If you guys would like to see that, comment below. Comment below.
Yes, I knew that would be your reaction.
Here's what we'll do.
Yes.
Here's what we'll do. We'll interview each other's moms about the other. So, I'll interview Glenn's mom about him, and Glenn will interview my mom about me.
So much worse.
If you would like to see that, if you guys would like to see that, please drop a comment. Do hashtag moms. That's what I want to see. Hashtag mom.
It fits into the paradigm of the shows that my mom's a client. So, your mom was married to an insurance agent
as is my mom.
Many years. Yes. So, your mom's a client too.
Yes.
I guess that makes sense. There we go. So they're clients, they're moms. Yeah, look at that. Moms and clients all at the same time. Hashtag moms. Comment below, you guys. If you
do we have a delay? Do we have a delay? I feel like your camera isn't matching your audio. It's like a little behind. I wanted to make sure we nipped that in the butt early on. Is it on my end? Is mine delayed?
No, you're not delayed at all. Am I delayed?
Okay, that's weird. So your audio's not, but your camera is. So you know how you watch those old karate movies where they're dubbed, and they'll be like. And they'll be like, I will get you. And then they'll be like, that's what you look like right now.
Oh, no. Here, I'll leave the studio. I'll come right back.
Okay. While Glenn is working on that on his end, guys, we are definitely excited about this episode. There is a lot of things that we did not get a chance to get into last time. All right, real quick, mic check.
Hello. Did that work?
It's still doing it on my end, but
same.
The audio's fine, so let's just power through.
All right, let's do it.
The audience is saying they're not seeing the delays. So it must just be on my end. So we'll just power through.
By the way, can we talk about your jacket for a second? Look at that jacket, you guys. Of
course.
My goodness.
Repping one of my favorite partners that we have in our agency, Humana. Yeah, very, 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 very nice. Received this yesterday in the mail, and it's awesome. Very comfortable, very snug.
I'm disappointed it's black. In my mind, when you said you got a jacket from Humana, I immediately assumed it was green, but for whatever reason, it's not green. So, but looks very good nonetheless. Very
It's
good.
good though. Yes. Yes. So shout out to Humana. Thank you so much for the swag. That as you know, it was funny. I was talking to some of our team members internally in the office yesterday, and I was like, "Look, I got some swag," and they all know that, like, we could get $1 million in business in a day, or we could get a piece of cool swag, and I think I'd be more excited about the swag. So
Christian goes to the conferences just to get the swag. He's just collecting all the trinkets at the conferences. He's just like, yes, give me the trinkets.
I understand that you have a bit of a story to start the show off this morning.
Well, the moms, that was my funny story. That was
that was it.
That was the entry. Yeah, that's what I was telling you about. Is I was like, imagine if we actually brought our moms on the show.
Gotcha.
Because I just think that would be probably the greatest episode we've ever done, and I think it would be brutal, especially if we interviewed each other's moms. That, man, you just had to take it to the next level, and absolutely just
go big or go home, right? Take it to the extreme.
In front of the audience. That would be brutal. But no, that was really that was my funny intro I was talking about.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, yeah, guys, as a reminder, comment #moms if you would like to see that on a future episode. Me interviewing Glenn's mom about him and him interviewing my mom about me. Horror show in every respect.
Halloween special.
We'll have to see what we can work out.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Every morning is Halloween. It's a trick without the treat.
It is.
So let's kind of dive in a little bit, right?
Let's do it.
To times we went bust. So I know last time there was a couple of different instances that came to mind for you that we ran out of time for you to be able to share. Talk about those a little bit. Like, let's jump into the first one that you wish you got to share on the last episode that we ran out of time for.
Yeah. So the immediate first one, the other kind of bigger one that I wanted to talk about that we ran out of time last time on. And again, if you missed that, it was a great episode. I highly recommend going back, checking out Times We Went Bust. Again, this is the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. So the idea behind this topic when we brought it up last time, you guys, was, obviously we've been doing this for over a decade, both of us. It might appear we're batting 1,000 at times, but we are not. There are plenty of times where we've made mistakes. We've taken left turns when we should have taken right turns. So we wanted to kind of get into some of these stories, learn from our mistakes, right? That's kind of the goal here, is learn from our mistakes, learn from things that we did that we shouldn't have done. And also it's just kind of comedy as well. When we share some of these, and, a quick little recap. If you didn't see that last one, I talked about a direct mail blunder where I tried to lease equipment. I tried to partner with someone. It was a nightmare. Christian, do a quick recap. What was your big, remind me of what your big blunder was? Oh, the contract. That was, the contract movie. That was the one.
I'm trying to remember if I only shared that one or if I went into anything else. That might have been the one that I shared.
Yeah, maybe we only talked about, because I remember my direct mail one went for a while. I talked for a while about that. But anyways, great episode. The
contracting one was definitely the first one that came to mind for me because, for anybody that didn't see that show, that basically at that point in time, it was in the early stages of our FMO. The company was probably, I don't know, 10% the size that it is today on the agency side. And, it set us back probably a year in terms of building our distribution based on what we could have done, because we spent so much time moving contracts. Because not only, this is something I didn't mention in the last episode, not only were we moving contracts there, which was just a catastrophe, then we had to turn around and move them back on the ones that already moved.
Yeah.
And, all of it really just kind of derailed a lot of what we were doing. And it was, as they say, a catastrophe, a shit show.
Yes. Great episode. Nonetheless, go back, check it out. Times When the Bus Part 1. This is Part 2. So the big one for me that I didn't get to last time, if you've been in the industry for a while, you might remember it was, I want to say like 2021. It was they called them cancer kits or CGX. And I'll give a little bit of a backstory about what this, and I think to my understanding, it might still be going on today to some degree. But the idea is that Medicare was going to start paying to cover genetic testing for cancer.
I remember this well.
Yes. And obviously it made sense from a health insurance perspective, because if you can start to get an idea of who's more likely to have certain types of cancers, because I can't remember how many different cancers they were trying to genetically trace, but there were quite a few. So what would happen is a package would be sent in the mail to a senior. They'd have to swab their cheek, which, again, hindsight being 2020 on this, the idea behind trying to get a senior to go through these steps is kind of bonkers. But you're sending a kid in the mail. They have to swab their cheek. They're putting it into a liquid. They're packaging it up. They're putting it back in. I can't remember. There may have been like a little form they had to fill out, and then they had to, put that kit back into the mail. It was all prepaid. Then it goes to the lab. The lab has to then verify the sample, test it to see what type of cancers potentially someone could be genetically linked to. And then those results get passed back to them, and obviously also to, I don't know where else it was going, to be honest. I wonder do you think the carriers were getting some type of metadata on this? They had to, right? Some sort of, like, no personal information, but maybe they were getting like actuarial data. Because I'm trying to think, like, Medicare has to be getting some of this data, right? If they're going to be covering the cost, and then maybe the carriers are somehow getting a piece of that data too. I don't know. Do you remember anything on that side of it?
Not in particular. I remember there was a lot of scams surrounding it that was going on. And,
yes.
it was one of those things where it was being used as an opportunity to scam a senior and get their information. So they would kind of go through the whole process, the swab of the cheek and the mail and everything. But then also they'd be like, over the phone when they were booking everything, they'd be like, we're going to need your Medicare number or your social security number. And they go through all this information. And then all of a sudden their identity was stolen. And we had it happen to a few clients of ours, actually. And so that's what really I remember the most about it, is all the scams surrounding it, because it was like the flavor of the week, as they say, when it comes to scams at the time.
Did you participate at all in this? Wow.
I did not at all.
God bless you. Yeah.
I was a skeptic. The nature of me is skepticism, right? So I was a skeptic. Sometimes that's bad for me, but other times, in this case, it was probably good.
I think it probably was good. So the scam that I ran into was on the other side of it, is being promised, again, every time a kit comes back and gets processed through the lab. I'm trying to remember right now off the top of my head what the dollar amount I was being promised per kit was. I want to say it was somewhere in the $500 to $1,000 range.
Wow.
It was a lot of money. I remember thinking, like, there was, because obviously, like, you have all these different fall off points in the chain, right? You have people who commit to doing it and then they get it in the mail, they never do it. You have people who get it in the mail and then they don't swab correctly. And when the lab gets the kit, it doesn't test. And so they're not going to pay you on it. You've got people who, it gets lost in the mail or whatever. So, I'm already thinking in my head, it's a numbers game, right? Classic kind of sales angle on this is, I get 100 people to commit. We send out 100 kits. If half of them send it back to the lab, and then maybe a third of those are billable, yada, yada. So I'm thinking all I've got to do is get 20, 30, 40 of these billable, and then I'll double down and kind of rinse and repeat the process. So started to sink a lot of money up front into this before I ever saw a penny return. Because again, I'm just thinking blue ocean, right? Like no one's doing this yet. It's brand new. If I can get in front of this, because that's the other part of this was once a senior did it, they would no longer qualify. So it was also, it kind of felt like, I wasn't there during the gold rush, but I'm assuming this was about what it felt like, right? I just felt like it was a sprint. It felt like the first one to get to that finish line was going to be the one that got the bag. So I started to sink quite a bit of money. I mean, to this day, it's definitely 5 figures. I can't necessarily say exactly how much because a lot of it was kind of broken up over a period of time and it was spent on different things like our dialer, our payroll. There were some shipping costs. There was some stuff like that involved. So it was well over 5 figures. Never saw a penny that got back to me. Allegedly, the lab claimed, because I kind of chased this all the way to the top, and the lab claimed that they weren't getting paid by Medicare. And then I think the lab ended up closing down and opening under a different name. And then it becomes this whole thing where it's like, there's this lab, it's on the other side of the US. What does the lab even look like? Is the lab even legit? Is the lab just bullshitting Medicare and trying to bill them, right? This goes back to that whole Medicare fraud conversation that we talked about earlier on the pod. And so to this day, I don't really know what the truth is about what happened with that. Did these kits ever even get processed? Was the lab even legit? Did the lab just have issues with billing Medicare and Medicare didn't want to pay because the lab was doing something wrong or they weren't registered? Like, I can't even tell you. I honestly don't know what the truth is, but it just got to the point where I had to cut my bait. I had to cut my losses and they were too great. And so, hindsight being 2020 on this, when something like this happens, you guys, my recommendation would be see it all the way through, right? See that ROI, right? Just like if you bought leads, you buy 100 leads, you get the sales, and then you can say, oh, the process works. Now I'm going to buy 1,000 leads. Now I'm going to buy 10,000 leads, right? That's what I wish I had done with this is I wish I had gotten that first check and then put in the 5 figures instead of being like, gold rush, let's go. Got to go, sprint. Let's go. We're going to be the first. But yeah, that's my big story I didn't get to last time. But I'm glad you never participated in that.
What year was this?
I want to say 2020. I want to say 20. No, I think it was earlier. I think it was like 2019.
Yeah,
it was pre-pandemic, actually, now that I'm thinking about it.
I remember doing an Everything Medicare podcast about it, warning people not to participate. I remember this very vividly. And from my perspective, not from the outside looking in, any client of ours that I saw that did it or any agent that I knew that participated in it, I don't have a single case that I ever heard about where it actually got processed, like in any scenario. So it kind of made me feel like the entire thing was just bull.
Yeah.
It was just a big hoax. And it certainly looks like, hindsight being 2020, that it probably was.
Yeah. Yeah.
I remember Medicare came out. Medicare came out and said, don't do this. Do you remember that?
Yeah. It turned into a big, and then I think it got to the point where the Department of Justice, I think, even ended up. That's when I really knew that the whole thing was just a scam from the beginning. I'd like to think, because here's the thing is, I think there were some providers that were doing it. So some people were going to their primary care physician.
Right.
The primary care was like, hey, while you're here, Mrs. Jones, you want me to swab your cheek for cancer, genetic testing, CGF? And they're like, yeah. I was like, okay, let's do it. And that was probably where this was legit, right? That's probably, but anything beyond that was because, hang on. I just remembered the other part of this. Hang on. I just remembered the other part of this. It was essentially had to get signed off by a doctor. So
That's right. I remember
that's
that
right.
now.
Yeah, that's right. So I just forgot about it. So I was explaining the food chain of how this was working. And as I was explaining it earlier, I'm like, something's not right. That sounds too easy. We were trying to get so this is where it was kind of sketchy. You had these teledoctors who were ordering the tests or signing off that Mrs. Jones needs this or wants this cancer genetic testing. And I went down this rabbit hole of teledoctors and these teledoctor networks. And let me tell you, there's some scary stuff out there as far as doctors. We're hearing about doctors that are just like, clicking through. They're just trying to sign off as much as they can on whatever gets in front of them, because every time they click yes to a prescription or to a test being ordered, they're getting paid like $20, some sort of, I don't know, I know kickbacks, that's the naughty word. I don't know what their payment is technically labeled as, but that was the whole while. But that was another big piece of this is you had to get the senior to agree. You had to get the doctor to sign off. The senior then had to process, and then you're trying to ship it to a lab. The whole thing was insane. But
yeah,
that's
a good one. That's a good one. Before I get into my next one, I want to talk about this episode's sponsor, and that is
Please
the
do.
Seven-Figure Medicare Agent Summit, you guys. You guys, we are less than 4 months away from the launch date of the Seven-Figure Medicare Agent Summit, and there are limited tickets left. If you haven't got a ticket already, I highly encourage you to do so today. The Seven-Figure Medicare Agent Summit is the premier event with a stacked lineup of speakers prepared to bring you extreme and diversified approaches from different segments, right, of value that you can implement into your business. Are you tired of buying tickets and going to an event where you're promised, hey, listen, buy a ticket, get in the room, and you'll learn the tactics to grow your business, only to, when you get there, find out that you're there to be upsold into getting into a different room for more money, to basically learn what you were promised that you were going to learn in the first place. None of that happens at the Seven-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. It is 100% value. All of the speakers do not pitch anything. They are just there to provide great value that pours into your business. So make sure you get a ticket today. There is no better event that you can go to this year. None in April, I'll tell you that. And get your ticket today to the Seven-Figure Medicare Agent Summit. Okay, so let's see. So there's so many that I was trying to think of that might apply here. The best one that I could that came to mind for me though was I want to say the first AEP that I was really buying leads.
Okay.
I don't remember even what year it was. Might have been 2016.
That's what I was gonna guess. 2016.
Before that, I had never bought any leads. Everything I was doing was cold calling and pounding the pavement and a lot of that stuff. I've talked about that a lot. So I finally bought leads, and I was buying leads from. No, if I should say.
I
was buying leads from a company called Health Plan One.
Whoa!
Which still is around today. Still around today.
Health Plan One.
But I don't think they sell leads openly like that anymore. They're kind of more of like a call center kind of operation. I think they were back then as well, but they were selling leads. What they were doing was they were generating internet leads and selling them. They were exclusive. They were give or take, and they had a bidding system. So you'd bid against other agents. But for the most part, oftentimes in our area, we could get them for like $20 a pop. And they were really strong quality, right? This was like early on internet leads. You know, most leads weren't exclusive back then. So this was kind of like a big deal. So we started doing that at the beginning of the year. Started buying, some here, some there. And it was the type of system where you put money into like a wallet. And every time a lead was generated, it would deduct that amount from your wallet, right? So let's say you have $1,000 in there, generate leads, $20. Then you have $980 left in your wallet, right? And so it was going pretty well. And so come AEP, I was like, okay, we're going all in. And I put every penny of my AEP budget into this.
Oh, we already know that's red flag.
So
Don't do it.
any guesses what happened? Any guesses what happened after that?
Well, I can tell you from, again, being on this side of that spectrum of that business, is that the garden hose probably got kinked because you were one of a bajillion agents that probably had the same thought, and you probably got no volume, would be my guess. Thank you. I will be here all week, you guys. I'll be here all week. Thank you.
From the lead daddy himself.
Boom.
That's exactly what happened, you guys. I was not able to get any volume, and it was one of those kind of systems where you could turn it on, turn it off. And I would leave it on all day, 24 hours a day, hoping for some volume.
Hey, please.
For a week
11 o'clock at night, and you're just like on your phone, you're just like
refresh.
Yeah.
And I think in the first 2 weeks I got like 1 or 2 leads or something like that. And I think I put something like, I'm trying to remember exactly what I put into it.
Yeah, how
At the
much?
time it might have been like $6,000, which for me at that time was a lot of money.
That is a lot of money. That's a lot of money. Even in today's inflated economy, that's still a good chunk of change. Okay.
And so I'm like, it's past October 15th at this point. I'm not getting any volume. So I'm like, oh shit, what do I do? Because I'd built my whole plan around getting consistent lead flow from this lead vendor. And I had a down AEP compared to the previous last few, my first 2. But what I was able to do is I was able to pivot. I was able to thankfully apply with them to get my money out of the account, because I was going back and forth with them. I had an account rep, and I was emailing the account rep and getting all fired up and getting all pissed off. And, the account rep's getting pissed off back at me, being like, we have a lot of other clients other than you. And I'm like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Very naive to the lead generation business at that point in time. Thankfully, it was like close to the end of October, I was able to get all my money out of it. And I was able to go into a different kind of lead system. And I put my money in a couple different lead companies at that point. I was like, let's kind of, not put all our eggs in one basket this time. I was able to bounce back and have a pretty decent AEP, but it was far less production than I did the year before, for sure. I think it was probably like 50 to 60% of what I did the year before. And so that was like a very expensive, punch in the face lessons for me. And the lesson I got out of that was, don't put all your eggs in one basket when it comes to lead flow. So you guys hear me say all the time, diversify, have different streams of lead flow. I am a big believer in that, because something might be great today and it can dry up tomorrow, and it might have nothing to do with you, and it might have nothing to do with anything you can control.
100%.
And so, I think it's good to have a little bit of diversity in multiple streams of lead flow. But yeah, that was a painful lesson at the time, and the majority of my production that I did that year was done in November.
Right.
I can only imagine what I was really like pivoting and trying to really bounce back in a big way. And I busted my hump to really save that AEP. But imagine what it could have been if I was a little bit more prepared come October 1st.
And that story still happens all the time, right? And the other thing people don't realize, especially with companies where it's structured as a bidding system, they get flooded with some, a lot of times bigger clients, call centers, etc. So that cost per bid goes way up. It'll be bidding around what, just throwing numbers out there, but let's say the average bid was like $30, $40 in September. And then by the time you hit October, AEP starts, all of a sudden it's $60, $80. And so, and usually it's structured too, where they are channeling the volume to the highest, not just the highest bidder, but they're also looking at the biggest volume too.
Right.
So if you're willing to pay the $80 per call, per lead, whatever, but you're only willing to accept a small volume, they're still not going to necessarily prioritize you. So as an independent agent, you get crushed by that increase every single time, even if you're willing to pay that increased volume. I've seen that over and over and over and over again with those types of lead companies. So yeah, that's a classic. That's a classic story.
And it's one of those things where it's like, let's say little Christian Brindle puts in 6,000 working by himself, schmuck in Utah. And then, some call center comes in and puts in 100,000, or something like that. Like, who's the bigger priority for the lead company?
100%.
The bigger client, right? The bigger client, the call center, other than little Christian Brindle. They're like, little Christian Brindle can wait.
100%. They'll refund you. They'll say, go somewhere else. They don't care. Exactly.
Yeah, they're like, okay, here's your $5,950 back. Go away.
Yeah. That's a classic. Hopefully, again, that's a lesson that I think someone could watch this, listen to this, and hopefully learn from your mistake and understand when they get into AEP, get into those times where demand gets really high. You need to understand where you're going to fit into that picture for the lead company with what their business model is. And the lead company is not going to be forthcoming typically with that information, right?
Right.
They're not going to come to Christian and say, hey, be careful giving us money because you might not get any leads from us for the next few months, right?
They're like, ring Christian. Hi, this is so-and-so, your rep with the lead company. Leads are us. It's a great lead company name if it's not already taken. Leads are us, right? We saw you want to put $6,000 with us. Is that your entire budget? Oh, it is. Yes. You might want to do. Good. Why don't we do 1,500?
Let's do.
We're not going to have the volume for you to do 6,000 unless you're paying 120 a lead or something like that.
Yeah.
Those conversations aren't happening.
I'm a huge fan of diversification. I'm always telling everybody to diversify. The last thing I want is for someone to put their entire marketing budget into lead heroes, even though obviously that benefits, me financially, Christian and I both financially at this point in time. But at the same time, I want you to be, especially going into something like AEP, I want you to have your bases covered because lead flow can go up and down. Your conversion with those leads can go up and down. You might find that you or your agents are converting better with a different type of lead. And ultimately, a winning strategy, the best agencies are typically doing exactly that, right? They're diversifying. So I'm a huge fan of diversification. So yeah, the second you said that you went all in, that's always scary to hear that as a marketer. It's like, eesh.
And it was one of those things where it's like, in the early years, the situations like that could cripple an agent.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so nowadays we do something like that. It's like, okay, we have to wait to get our money back. Okay, we'll just put another $6,000 into something else. We'll pivot quickly. We'll run some Facebook ads. We'll do something. Back then it's a different animal a little bit. So yeah. Hopefully that's a lesson for a lot of you. To avoid 100%. That nice little slug in the face that I got at that point in time. I have another one, but I don't know if you have one or not.
I do have one. Go. And it's another relatively big one. So 2017, 2018, I was looking at spinning up a Medicare supplement call center here in the States. And I kind of, in some ways, put the cart in front of the horse. So I'll kind of explain the situation and what happened. So I had a business partner who was going to really be kind of the sales side of this, in charge of the Medicare contracts, the sales training. He already
familiar.
He already had a foot. Yeah, this was my failed marriage. This is my successful marriage.
That one didn't work out. I'm into you, honey.
Yeah, I'm on my second marriage now, and second wife is always better than first wife. So so this was kind of such. So I had a business plan put together. Like I felt so good about it at the time. I remember thinking like I thought I was strapping onto a rocket. I thought at the time MedSup was super hot. This was like again 2017, I think. We had a location for this call center. It had like a basement that we could expand into. So I'm thinking like I'm going to create a boiler room, type mentality.
Where was this call center, by the way? Where was it there in Washington, Oregon, or was it?
It was actually in Washington. It was just outside Vancouver. It was actually across the river. Again, I was still in Oregon at the time. It was across the river. It was just outside Vancouver. The biggest hurdle probably that I was going to encounter with this was just the cost of living. It's pretty high compared to some of these other places in the US. I just saw this list a couple days ago where it was like the 10 lowest cost of living cities. And the funniest thing to me is that there's so many successful agencies. And I'm like, oh, so-and-so has a successful agency here. So-and-so has a successful agency here. And it just seems like if you have a low cost of living, you can pay someone a lower wage, but they still get to live well, and then everyone wins, right? When you're in a high cost of living area, like really Christian and I both we compared before, it's very similar cost of living. It's much more difficult. It's much more difficult because you have to pay your employees more, your agents more, and just the whole math model kind of changes behind it. So anyways, that being said, so we had a location. I had a business partner that was already really well established in the Medicare community who I felt like would be a really good fit to help me get this off the ground. He had money because, again, the part of the business plan was that we needed to both come to the table with, I'm trying to remember what we were trying to start with. I want to say it was something like $300K. And so, I was responsible for about half that. So technically I was going to be a minority partner on this. So again, I kind of felt like this was almost a blessing in disguise, hindsight being 2020, because I would hate to be a minority partner. But so I needed to come up with about $150,000. We were already interviewing to get staff in there. We had the location, we had the business plan, we had everything lined up. Obviously, I was already generating MedSup leads that I felt really good about at the time. So it really seemed like all my ducks were in a row. Well, here's where I've really messed up on this one is the past couple years with my taxes, I thought I was a genius. I was essentially zeroing out my income every year. And again, I'm thinking, self-employed, I'm a genius. I'm showing little to no income. That way I don't have to really pay anything in taxes. And so when I went to go try to finance my portion of the startup capital, the bank was essentially like, Glenn, you're not making any money. And I said, that's not true. I was like, I'm bringing in all this revenue. I was already generating well into six figures of revenue. I was like, and they were like, but, this is what you're reporting as your net. And I was like, well, I'm reporting that as my net as a tax strategy. And I just thought this was such a simple thing. But, again, here we are, hindsight being 2020, almost 8 years later. This is part of the benefit of paying taxes. This is part of the benefit of reporting a lot of income to the IRS, just like what Christian and I were able to do last year. And we're going to probably do again this year, is you get to go to the bank, you show them your tax statement, and you can say, hey, this is all the money I made last year. This is how much I paid in taxes. I'd like to borrow some money. And they say, okay, I like money. I like money. And the bank gives you money, and then you get to go and grow your business and do whatever you need to do. So that ultimately ended up blowing up the whole thing. Is I couldn't get the financing, and the only other option was to really give up almost all my equity. And I was already a minority equity partner on the deal, and I'm just like, no. So
yeah, no,
it ended up being another 5-figure loss because we had already started like funneling some things into this to get things rolling. And so by the time we terminated the deal, I had to fork up like $15K just to cover costs. Again, hindsight, I really do think it was a blessing. The idea of going into that and being a minority partner and essentially having zero control, I think would have really sucked long term.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
So I'm happy. I'm honestly happy with how it ended up going. But another bust for sure. This episode of the Seven Figures or Bust podcast is brought to you by the Seven Figure University. SevenFigureUniversity.com is a culmination of Christian Brindle's and mine's educational videos that we have developed over the past 2 decades of combined experience in the senior insurance space. There's more than 250 videos, hundreds of hours of content that can help you become a top producer or a top producing agency in the senior insurance space. We're talking about videos of how to work with specific carriers, how to do different types of marketing, such as seminars or Facebook advertising, how to generate content in the niche to help grow your business, how to grow an agency, all sorts of things. There's so much value in this. It's unbelievable. Christian, what do agents need to know about Seven Figure University?
Seven Figure University can best be thought of as an agency blueprint in a box that's put together for you that brings you step by step in every facet of building a successful seven-figure insurance agency and lays it out all in front of you so you can follow along. Whether you guys need help with marketing, whether you guys need help with branding, whether you guys need help with hiring, training, standard operating procedures, systems and processes, automation, you name it, it's covered in this course. Not only that, you get access to my weekly training calls every Thursday that go from January through the end of September on a week-to-week basis. And you can attend those live and ask questions live. And then, of course, the recordings are put into the university afterward if you can't attend it and make the live training. So there's just so much value. It's the gift that keeps on giving, and it's a great investment into your business to kind of keep you up to date on what's going on, but also kind of point you in the right direction in various things that you're struggling with.
Some of the best training you'll be able to find, you guys, in one spot for one price. Go to sevenfigureuniversity.com and learn more.
Let's get back to the show. Yep. Yeah, it's crazy to think, right? Like you reach a fork in the road, you can go two ways.
Yes.
Let's say, you went the way you went, or you could have given up equity and went that other way to try to make it work. Try to like squeeze the square peg into the round hole.
100%. You know that feeling when you just start to get so much friction with an idea, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it just starts to. You're like, every time we talk, every day, every day we talk. This is like sandpaper. It's just like, this doesn't make sense, but we can do it anyway.
But I will make it work
anyway. Maybe we just do it anyway.
Oh my goodness.
Oh, dude,
okay, so funny. The next one I got
let's hear it.
This one probably isn't as dramatic as some of the other ones we've shared. But I look back on it and I look at it as a big mistake. Not necessarily in money wasted, but more time wasted.
Time's valuable, man. That counts.
And, I think about I guess you could look at it from a monetary perspective because all that time wasted could have been used to freaking grow the business, right? So I've told the story before. Before I got into insurance, I was actually at age 19 studying for my insurance licensing exam, or maybe I was actually 20. I was studying for my insurance licensing exam. I met a friend at my job who was in an MLM. I've talked about this before. So I go into the MLM. We all know the story,
Yes.
Long story short, I do it for a year, make no money. I'm pretending like I'm making money to recruit people.
Like everybody does. Everyone's doing that.
People are coming into my ghetto apartment to see a presentation. There's someone ODing on the sidewalk outside, be like, oh my, I'm just come up the stairs.
Hey, I'm gonna make you rich. Come on up here.
Go on up. You see these healthy energy drinks, So anyway, I did that for a year.
Oh, yeah.
That didn't work out. I'm like, this is dumb. I'm like, I'm in the wrong vehicle. Get my insurance license. I get in, right? I think it was in 2016 as well. For so I had this idea in my head at the time. So 2016, how old would I have been? 23, maybe?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Sounds about right.
23. So I am full blown not smart at this point in time. Like, just not there. So I had this idea in my head at the time where I'm like, once I get my insurance business off the ground a little bit, I knew this guy that owned a karate dojo, and he got into like the MLM I was in and was selling it to his customers. Like it was like, you know, promoting it at the counters and everything like that. I thought he was so smart. I was like, oh, this guy, he's a genius.
He's a black belt and a genius.
Yeah. So I was like, that's gonna be me. You know, I'm gonna get back in. I'm gonna get back in. I'm not quitting. I'm gonna get back in.
God, Christian Brindle.
So my idea was I was gonna grow my insurance business, get back into MLM, and make it work. But I was gonna find the right MLM. And I was like, because I was still like a believer in it at that point in time. You know, I was like, it didn't work, but I'm like, we had the wrong company, wrong vehicle, blah, blah, blah. So,
Bert. Okay, Coach Bert. Wrong vehicle.
So I get back in, I find another company. I do a bunch of research in a bunch of companies. For those of you that don't know, Utah is the capital of the world for MLMs.
Yes, it sure is.
There's a buttload of companies out here. So I find one, and that company is called Zango. It was basically the same thing I was just in. Like
it was energy. It was drinks,
health and wellness. It wasn't an energy drink, but they had like juice that had like
mango. What were the claims? What were the claims? The health claims?
It was insane. Like they made claims. Like I saw someone claim. I saw someone claim at a talk that they had a cancer patient that started drinking the juice and their cancer went away, and the doctors couldn't explain it. Oh yeah.
You can't say it was the health drink, but the cancer's gone. So you tell me.
Who's gonna put 2 and 2 together in this audience today? You know, like, I'll never forget. I went to because the company was in Utah. It was in Lehigh. And so I would go up all the time for like meetings and shit, waste my time. And like I was into it for like 4 or 5 months. I went to Vegas for a convention with my team, fucking bunch of losers, you know.
The playbook's the same for all these. It's so crazy.
Yeah.
It's
and
so crazy.
I look back on it and I'm like, man, like I was spending probably just as much time on that as I was spending on my insurance business, if not maybe a little bit more towards that. And it's just, you know, I think about it and I'm like, oh, you know, if I could look in a crystal ball and like see myself doing it, you know, I'd been like, dumb, you know, I want to reach through and, you little bastard.
Well, see, it's tough though, because I bet you probably talked to someone who was wildly successful, right?
Of course. But the story is always the same in all of them.
It's always the same.
There was somebody that lived in Sandy, actually, pretty close to the office here, had a great big house. But
let's get him on the pod.
This person, I remember, she said she was making. So at the time, I was probably about to make $100,000 a year in insurance. I was like right on the brink. And she was like $100,000, huh? She's like, I make 980 a year. How's that for you? She was like, really like, she was like, yeah. And she was like one of the first 5 people in the company. So it's always the same story with the people that are making all this, you know, they're like the first person in, and then everyone that ever gets in goes underneath them. It's bullshit. But back then I was like, wow, you know, she was like trying to convince me not to work my insurance business and like quit and do this full time, you know?
Yeah.
And I was under her, of course, in some way, shape or form. And so, you know, it was just such a dumb thing. I spent so much time into that. It wasn't even necessarily the money. You know, the money, I spent a little bit of money, you know, here and there and on product and stuff.
It's a huge distraction. And
the distraction, the focus away from what really mattered, what my vehicle was, right? Like, and this is why I say all the time, like, if any of you guys have ever heard me talk about like this whole multiple streams of income thing. 9 out of 10 people that talk about having multiple streams of income are broke. They just don't have anything that's built up. They don't have even one that's really established.
Right.
I talk to agents like this all the time. They're like, I'm an agent. I'm a real estate agent. I'm in an MLM. I do Uber. I'm like,
I'm a PNC agent, life and health agent. I'm a financial advisor. I sell houses.
Yeah.
I fix cars. I'm an airplane pilot. I'm a helicopter pilot.
You're basically playing dress up.
Yeah.
Every day is Halloween for you because you put on a different costume every day and pretend you're something.
you know what would be a great topic is the MLM topic in insurance, because this is such a thing, right? Where I remember talking to agents early on who were like, insurance is just an MLM. It's just an MLM. And it's tough because some of these organizations structure themselves exactly like an MLM.
Yes, absolutely.
And so it gets really blurry, right? It gets really blurry. I honestly don't want to say too much more because I think it's such a great topic. I have a bunch of MLM insurance. Yeah.
I would love to do an MLM specific episode. But I look back on that, right? Like, I want to say 5 months was probably as long as I spent in it. But that 5 months, I basically had almost no growth in my insurance business. The only business that I was writing was like a referral here or there. And it's just a stupid, dumb distraction.
Yeah.
And
that's tough.
I had to learn the hard way that, like, it finally clicked for me one day that nobody that's massively successful is doing all these stupid little things. Like, you take anybody, like, even like people might say, oh, Elon Musk is an exception because not even really, because he did PayPal first.
Right.
That was his focus.
And he already had like 9. Once you hit 9 figures, 8 figures, 9 figures, you can have multiple streams of revenue because it's a completely different ball game at that point. But when your net worth is 5 figures, what are you doing? What are you doing?
What are you doing?
Yeah. What are you doing? Like, yeah.
And even despite that, right? Like, Elon went into 2 companies, SpaceX, Tesla. He just bought Twitter a couple years ago, right? He was the richest man in the world at that point, if not like top 3 at the time. Now he's the richest man in the world. Like, you think he's doing every little thing in all 3 of those companies? No. For the most part, those companies are probably pretty self-sustaining at this point. You know, and so, it's just one of those things that's like, I feel like a lot of people don't get that. And I was certainly one of them. And so that was a bust moment for me, that it was like just a dumb distraction, to where if I could eliminate all those little distractions in my early years, who knows where the company would be today.
For sure. And I tried to, in my mind, when I was thinking about these times I went bust, I was trying to really categorize it by the dollar amounts. But I think if you really look at some of the time sucks too, it opens up to a bunch more. And it who's to say that even if there wasn't a huge monetary investment, who's to say that something that derails you for 6 to 12 months off your main objective, who's to say what that actually costs you? And I have a litany of those.
Compounding costs.
Yeah. I have my own MLM story. And the irony is it's literally like the same thing. It's the same thing, right? It's a health product. I never made any money. I put a tiny bit in. It was like 6 to 12 months of my life. There was a convention I didn't go to, but the same thing, right? All sorts of wild, outlandish claims that could never be proven. You meet the one person that's actually making money and you think, oh, wow, I can be like them, if I just do this. But yeah, I think I'd love to run back the MLM insurance episode. I think that would be great because it does get messy. The lines get blurry there. So I think it would be really interesting.
And it's interesting because, like, the 2 things that I was in, you could not make money unless you recruited. Like, you could not sell the product to customers and you'd make pennies for customer business, but the real money was made by bringing in distributors.
Same.
So like,
of course.
And there's been so many studies that have been done over the years, like a lot of these, models and everything like that, like to really get, they'll talk about like going 7, 8, 9 levels down to really get to the 8th level down. It ends up being where like a third of the planet is in the company.
Yeah. The thing, if you're not literally like one of the first few people who start recruiting or start selling for that MLM, you have to get half the planet into the MLM to be the same level of wealth that person at the top is. And people never do that math. No one ever does that math, you know? So yeah. Let's get into some final thoughts here. We're getting towards the top of the hour, and I also don't want to bust on this MLM topic because there's so much, especially coming from the life side. I don't feel like you really see the MLM structure as much on the health side of the business, but on the life side, it is just ripe. Where and I'll have to maybe I'll do a little research before, but I almost think that potentially some of these companies even maybe got prosecuted for.
I believe it.
Yeah, I'm almost positive, honestly, that there's some structures, some names that I could throw out where people would be like, "Oh yeah, that was a legit MLM. That was illegal what they were doing." So I'll do a little more research, but I already have some ideas cooking on that one. That'll be a great topic.
Yes.
And I know there's some guests we could probably potentially bring in that were a part of some of these MLMs. I was in like an MLM light, I would say. It was more of a legit company that I joined back in the day.
Bring in someone that's in an MLM.
Ooh, and try to break them.
Yeah, like live on the podcast.
Yeah. So tell us why you joined Primerica.
I heard your commission is 40%.
So you've never sold a policy, but you've recruited 30 agents. Tell me what's going on.
You're still studying for your licensing exam, but you have 30 agents?
It's like Chris Hansen.
Have a seat right over there.
So these chat logs say that you promised they'd make 7 figures in 6 months. Do you remember sending those?
You don't. Well, is this your handle? Then you must have sent them, Brad.
Brad, this picture's you on a jet. Was this?
Now, but when our cross-examiners checked it out, this is not your jet. This was you at the beach, and this was a celebrity's jet. Looks like you doctored the photo, Brad. Why would you do that?
I love it, guys. If you were a part of a life insurance MLM, or you're currently in what you think might be a life insurance MLM, reach out. We'd love to talk to you. Love to get you on the pod. I honestly think it would be a great conversation. I have a little bit of experience in that realm, so I think it would be fun to talk about. Final thoughts though on today's episode, you guys. Times we went bust part 2. If you'd like to see a part 3, I know for a fact I've got some more stories. I was already thinking about it, but we're getting towards the top of the hours. So I didn't want to get into it, especially if we start talking about things that just ate up time that never went anywhere. That opens up a whole nother spectrum of activities for me, of opportunities that ultimately went bust. What I hope, though, from watching and listening to this episode, or if you watched or listened to Times We Went Bust Part 1, I hope that you can learn from our mistakes. I hope that, again, the situation Christian shared today on the podcast is such a classic example. I've seen that story over and over and over and over. And it's very common, and it will continue to happen. So hopefully you can take a story like that, learn from it, and not make that same mistake down the road. That's the goal with sharing some of these stories. Obviously, I think Christian and I have fun sharing as well. But those are my final thoughts. I do want to mention to you guys, Freebie Friday is every single Friday. We're giving away great stuff. I want to get a running total. It's got to be over $10,000. We've already worth of services, of goods right here in the group, Seven Figure Medicare Agent. So we're going to continue this. I wouldn't be surprised if we break six figures. The run rate we're at this year, where we're going to give away probably over $100,000 worth of things over this course of this year, right here in the group. And all you have to do is comment on one of these live streams. We typically do 4 per week. So you can enter up to 4 times just by commenting at least once on every single stream. And that automatically enters you into the giveaway that we do every single Friday. So those are my final thoughts, good sir. Final thoughts on today's episode.
Yeah, I mean, great episode, just like part 1. And hopefully, you guys, these types of stories can teach you valuable lessons. Sure, they're entertaining, but there's very valuable lessons in them. Like, for example, don't put all your eggs in one basket for my story. Glenn's story with the call center, right? Like, it's good to show income sometimes. It's good to pay taxes sometimes, there's just lessons that can be taken that can prevent you guys from falling into the same holes, if you will, that we fell into in some of these instances.
Yeah.
Of course, if you guys would like to see another part 3, let us know. If you guys ever have a specific topic you'd like us to dive into, please let us know. We always take requests, and we'll definitely have them considered. And of course, if you'd like to see the episode with the mothers, please comment on any platform that allows you to do so. YouTube,
Mother's
Facebook,
Day special.
# mom. Okay, and we'll see what we can do.
I'm gonna regret ever bringing that up. I can just feel it. It's gonna happen. It's gonna happen.
I don't want to do it either, but I'm a man of the people. I'm a people guy. I'm a people man.
You are a man of the people. You are. That's very respectable.
I don't want to do it at all.
Very respectable.
Guys, appreciate you watching all the way to the end. You guys are fantastic. We appreciate your love and support of the show. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe on any platform that allows you to do so. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review on platforms that allow it, such as Apple Podcasts. We would certainly appreciate it. And we'll be back with another episode of the 7 Figures or Bust podcast. Thanks, everybody. We will see you on the next one.